Are you concerned about AI starting to come into the picture and sex robots? Porn, in most cases, by its nature, is not sensitive. It's not sensual.
It can be highly erotic and highly amazing, but it can also be very detrimental. I fear that people will become more disconnected and sex will become more lacking in that way. You could actually choose, instead of just surviving, you could be thriving.
First of all, you guys are going to love this episode. Jenn Pinkerton, sexologist. Ben, I don't know about you.
Cool.
I'm not embarrassed to say I learned a couple things.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, we can all get better. Don't get me wrong.
We can all get
I think
better.
I think she gave me a little bit of a playbook, so
did.
That's what's key.
Yeah, she did. I would just say that she had a couple of really great tips. So make sure you guys pay attention to it. It's not what you think. It's not a salacious episode of, she's not.
Well, we did
get
get into porn, sex robots, and actually we didn't. So I mean, that's a little.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
that was pretty awesome. So, anyways, make sure you guys all check it out. Great episode. I finished that episode going, wow, that was like, people are gonna love that episode. So make sure you check that out.
100%. Porn, sex robots, and masturbation.
Jenn Pinkerton, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We are really excited about this. We have so much to cover with you today. I, though, want to set this up the right way. There are some kind of incredible stats when it comes to what we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay.
And I want to tee that up if I can. These stats blew my mind. Among 18 to 29-year-olds, 24% reported no sex in the past year. That was a 2024 study. That's double what it was in 2010. So really in 2010, there was around 12% reported no sex. Now it's 24%. Weekly sex among adults 18 to 64 fell from 55% in 1990 to 37% in 2024. Even if you had a partner, sex fell from 42% in 2014 to 39% in 2024. Married couples' weekly sex dropped from 59% in the study 96 to 2018. That went from 59% to 49% between 2010 and 2024. Jenn, here's the first question. Biology hardwires us to continue to procreate and adapt and to assure that we can procreate and get out there. Studies like starvation, helping to freeze aging because we need to get out there and procreate. Jenn, this is the question. Is our current society finally broken eons of evolution that is hardwiring us to procreate?
Well, with those stats, it certainly seems like it. I think that what is fundamentally missing now is lack of emotional safety. And when we don't have emotional safety, we do not have a thriving sex life.
Okay, and so what you're saying is that the big thing that's changed is we just don't feel safe emotionally. And is that everything from, I talk to a lot of younger guys and they're like, hey, Dom, it's not like when you were younger and you can go out to a club and you can say hello to a woman and have a car. Like they don't want to hear that. It's all apps. It's like hands up. Is that part of that?
Yes, I mean, the whole landscape has changed. People don't have the organic meets like they used to. People don't have the opportunity to slowly get to know people like you used to. Everything is instant access. It's instant decision. And because it's usually instant decision, there's not enough time to establish this emotional safety, which is what really propels us to have these amazing, thriving relationships and sex lives. And also, we're in a world that with that instant access, people have different boundaries now. People have different expectations. I think it's just a very different landscape than it was even, say, 10 years ago, what I see now.
So is there like a order of operations here? Like you got to fix the mind first, the body next. Is it in parallel? Like, what are the steps to fix society here right now when it comes to this?
I'm not sure I'm the magician that has the all answer for all society. But what I will say relationally in my world, I think that so much of, in the beginning, you date someone and it's exciting. And so you may have all the things you want right in the beginning. But after a while, the newness fades. That's just inevitable. That's the way attraction works. And then what you're left with really depends on that sense of connection. How connected do we feel with each other? How well do we know each other? How willing are we to be vulnerable with each other? How much are we going to give in order to get back? And a lot of times I think that piece begins to be missing in the beginning. And so relationships don't continue on. And so then when you have the apps, which make it so much easier to say, great, I'm done, let me move on, next, that changes things. And so you don't have that emotional investment maybe that you used to.
But it's also interesting. It makes sense that the younger kids aren't meeting each other; they're not mingling.
Right.
But the statistics Dom pointed out there, it seems to be more of a global phenomenon. Even married couples, even young people, old people, middle age. So there's something in addition to just the fact that they don't know how to talk to each other. So, but it's just interesting how it's all going that way.
Right. But I'll go back to safety, even with that answer, because think about how people look at their lives now differently. We want to have these relationships where we feel as though all of our needs are met. And I think historically, many years ago, there wasn't such this idea that you could even have your needs met. And we often had our needs met in other ways. And now we want the person, our person, to be the one thing that fulfills our cup in every possible way. And that becomes
are you talking sexually or
everything,
like
sexually, emotionally, physically, as your best friend, as the person you do everything with, this idea of this one person. I think that's where you have this global aspect of it. If you want to think globally, people used to have marriages and relationships where it was a very small piece of their life. And then we had, villages and communities and people that fulfilled a lot of other aspects of relational work. But now we rely on this one person, our soulmate, our be-all, end-all, in these very codependent, sometimes structures, where this one person has to be everything. And then if there's no safety to have it, you're not going to have it.
So very heavy here because you just hit on so many different things here at once. First off, the needs are greater also, right? Like there's so many more needs. It used to be, do we have food? Do we have some shelter? And then even when you got into society, do we have food and shelter? Can we maybe go to the movies once a month or anything like that? It sounds like society has dumped a bunch more on of what we think are actual needs. Is that probably fair?
Right. I mean, we didn't talk about boundaries years ago. We didn't talk about what we expected years ago. We thought if we are getting along okay, then we're fine. We're supposed to marry this person, so we will. And we're supposed to stay together, so we will. And now there's a much bigger push, and in some ways it's wonderful about this autonomy and agency and sense of knowing what you deserve and what you want. But on the other side of that coin, with all those new expectations, we're expecting this other person to be everything.
And then also, when you're saying you're expecting that other person to fulfill all these needs that the quote-unquote village used to do, is that because people are so much more isolated as well?
For sure. I mean, we have people that work from home that never even engage with other people in the same way we used to. You're depending on an app to have all your conversation. And what if someone isn't a great conversationalist? What if they don't really know how to do that? And so then automatically maybe people don't meet in the way they would before. You don't have that organic slow build anymore. You really don't. You have a checklist. You have an idea of this is what I'm looking for. This is what you're looking for. Do we meet it on paper? Okay, we do. Then great. Now we'll talk and we'll see where that goes. And that either is going to take us to the next step or not. I just think that the entire landscape has changed for so many different reasons. And it leaves us with relationships where people are unfulfilled, where if they are together, oftentimes they're not even having sex. And people don't, either have this transactional way of moving on to the next person rather than putting the work in to make it happen. They just say next and let's find somebody else.
The transactional nature of it all. And I've said this to my kids, I've said this to friends, that the world is so much more transactional. And when you don't put a ton of value into a relationship, and it's hard to put value in a relationship when it was so easy to get. That's my point. I think, Ben, I can't remember, we were talking to our matchmaker guest, and we were saying that when we were younger, you had to go up, you had to have a conversation.
Yeah.
It was
fun. It was the funnest part. I love it.
Yeah.
It was a great part, but once you got it, it had a lot of value because there was work associated and effort associated with it.
You said once you got it. I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm just kidding. Yeah. We all know what you're talking about, Dom. We all went to college, okay, Dom? Yeah, we know.
Jen, I'm sorry about Ben. I don't even know what to say about Ben. Like, honestly, everything with Ben is just, let me ask you a question. There's one gear Ben's got. It's a high gear. It's a high gear. And by the way, this everything's going to be sex in this conversation. But if you're talking to Jen, Ben, she is saying, no, it's not. It's emotion, brother. That's what she's saying. Anyway, so Jen, it's so transactional that it loses value. Is that fair?
For sure. And so you have to have the kind of relationship with the safety I'm talking about to be able to say, hey, this has lost value, but I really like you. So how can we change this? What can we do? Let's be curious about each other to create and shift our relationship sexually to be something different where we're both fulfilled. There has to be growth and movement.
Can you expand, like, safety? Of course, we want people to feel like physically safe.
Emotional safety, if I can give you an easy definition, would be the concept that we feel accepted and seen with the person we're with. We can share what we feel. We can share our fears or ideas without fear of repercussion, without fear the relationship is going to end. We have the stability and the security to know that we can be honest and vulnerable with one another. Because vulnerability is the very bridge to connection, and connection is the bridge to intimacy. So if you're missing a part of that, then you're not going to have that intimacy that you're desiring.
Yes, it's a trust. It's like yeah, that makes sense.
It's a foundation. And that's so very important to have.
Is there also confusion about the roles, right? When you think about it, I talk to younger guys. They seem there's a lot that seem very confused about what role they should be playing. Am I supposed to be a man? Am I supposed to be like a man's man? Am I not supposed to be a man's man? They don't know what they want to, they don't know what to be. And I feel like there's confusion there. Is that a fair statement, or do you see that?
There's a lot of conversation about that for sure. Part of it is feminine versus masculine energy, and part of it is also where is the difference between the age-old idea of toxic masculinity versus being a sensitive man that's vulnerable with their feelings. And so there's two sides of that. We're talking about that side. I think that the part about this idea of can we be sensitive? Can we be vulnerable? Well, sure. I mean, women want that. But women also still want a man to lead. They also still want a man to be able to lead in that way. And so it's a balance. And I think the balance comes with that curiosity. It comes with being able to be self-aware in who you are, to be emotionally mature. The more emotionally mature you are, the more able you are to meet needs of vulnerability without sacrificing your sense of strength, if that makes sense.
I think when you're strong in that way and you know it, there's an effortlessness, right, that kind of comes along with that. And obviously that's probably pretty attractive.
For sure. And then the other side of that is a lot of conversations that exist around feminine and masculine energy. And what that blanket term means is if, let's say you're in a relationship and you have a woman who, it's a heterosexual relationship in this example I'm giving, and maybe a woman is carrying all the mental load, carrying all the emotional load, managing everything for a household, doing all that. And then maybe the husband is saying, well, I'll help you, tell me what to do. Well, then you're just mommy there also. And so then this woman is in her masculine role leading this relationship without ever having the feeling of it being returned. And so sometimes that masculine and feminine energy doesn't work either because it's out of balance. You know, women still fundamentally want someone to lead. That is, in a heterosexual relationship, that is normal. But not lead in a different way. Lead with curiosity and lead with that vulnerability while still being strong. And sure, I can see why it's confusing as hell to men. Absolutely. But that is where we are today.
But I don't think, I don't know. I was brought up by strong women. And so for me, it is, you're going to lead, but you're going to be respectful. And I think that's probably like a big piece of it. I think that's where it gets confusing, is that if you're leading and you're initiating and you're the one that's really driving all this, as long as you're respectful, it's fine. The thought is if you're not being respectful, like it just seems that initiation of leading sometimes gets construed as your toxic masculinity sometime from folks. Is that a fair statement?
For sure. I think that the way to also have that balance, like when you're talking about respect, is to be able to meet each other where they are, learning how to give love in the way your person wants to receive it, understanding that. And also, how did you grow up? What attachment wounds do you have? Because if maybe you're a man who grew up and it depends on generationally where you lie with this, it would have been very common to say, hey, don't cry, rub some dirt in that. You know, get over yourself, toughen up. those messages may translate into somebody saying, I really can't feel what I feel. I'm not comfortable feeling vulnerable feelings. So then you're not vulnerable in your relationship. So that would be part of where that could go in a negative way. But then it can also lean too much the other way, where if you're not leading and you don't have that ability to do that, then the relationship feels like there's something missing there too. So I think how you were raised, what was your modeling, what kind of love lessons did you get growing up, absolutely affect how you show up in your relationship today. Who you are as a woman, who you are as a man, based on what you saw those roles look like, based on what kind of messaging you got, it absolutely contributes to who you become.
You seem to be really focusing on the relationship component of it. I'm assuming because that's like how the sex comes next. It's like, but what if people feel like they have a good relationship and they're just not having the sex? Like what do people use you for? Like, what is the number one thing that you give better? Because, you know, the relationship stuff is one thing. The sex is another thing. I know they're intimately related in every way, but.
Well, they're so intimately related because someone could come to me and talk about in their relationship that they just have horrible fights and conflict. But there's no way I'm going to help them build a relationship that feels like it's truly thriving unless we're also talking about sex. Now, if someone comes to me to talk about sex and they're saying either we don't have sex or we want to have a different type of sexual relationship or I'm just not attracted to them anymore or we have infidelity, any of those topics, I'm also going to talk about the relationship itself and talking about sex. So they're so intertwined. And for me, being a connection expert and I work with relationships and sex, I don't really have a difference in that. Every conversation leads back to the other one. Even someone, if they said, you know, I never want a relationship. I just want to talk about sex. I just want to have great sex and I want that to be this way. I'd say, great. Well, but what kind of communication are you having to have that? If that's all you want and you want it to be very performative or maybe very transactional, great. You're allowed to have any kind of sex life you'd like. But how are you communicating that to the person you're with to make certain that you're managing those expectations and you're getting what you want? You're going to get your needs met and so are they. And so it's still all is intertwined. I don't think that there's an easy way to separate relational and sex work.
But is the number one person that comes to you, which one, or you know, which one do they ask for? Is it more common to say, hey, we're having bad sex, and you're like, you know what, you got to work on your relationship, or we're having a bad relationship, and you're like, you know what, you should work on your sex life. It'll help your relationship. Like, which comes first for the people that
I
you
wish
help?
that people were confident enough to always be able to even come seeking help just for sex. But I would say people feel safer usually coming to talk about their relationship, and then sex is a part of it. And then oftentimes I'll find sex is the biggest part of it. You know, but a lot of times people don't feel comfortable coming to sex therapy for that. They don't feel comfortable talking about that unless it's recovering from infidelity, which most people realize we're going to have to get some help for this if it's really affecting and damaging the relationship, or it's because they're having such a mismatch in desire where they completely are either not having sex or they cannot have sex where everybody's getting their needs met. And so people will come for that. But I find that always when someone comes about their relationship, we're going to talk about sex. It's always going to happen.
And vice versa, I guess, is what you're saying, right? Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Jen, like I am always shocked. I'll be talking to somebody. I have people that I talk to that I see like all the time. And they're like, yeah, me and my wife, we don't sleep in the same room. Mm-hmm. And that blows my mind. Because I was like, well, so many questions. How did that start happening? Why is it happening? It's got to be hitting your sex life.
Well, it depends. You can have a separate sleeping arrangement and still have a great sex life, but it's going to come back to that safety and communication. Are you able to look at your spouse and say, honey, I love you, and I absolutely want to have amazing sex with you multiple times in a week, but you snore, or I can't sleep, or it's too hot, or it's too cold, or you've got 3 dogs in the bed, or whatever the reason is, I'm not sleeping. So I want to come and be with you, and I want us to watch TV together, have a great meal together, and then I want to go up and I want to have sex, and I'm going to go to bed to sleep, and you're going to sleep. You can have that kind of relationship, and it doesn't have to affect your sex life. In fact, a lot of studies have shown that you can actually have even a stronger sex life because you are making time for sex, because you're not just naturally falling in the same bed together. Now, if you're sleeping in separate bedrooms, but you're not talking about sex, you're not scheduling that sex, you're not making sure you're having that, then that's a very different story.
Ben, you hear this? Different rooms. Do you hear this? Like this is a thing.
It
like
happened.
Who would have known?
Want their autonomy. A lot of people say, I want my own space. Why can't I have my own space in our home? Why did the kids get their own space, but I don't? Why can't I have my own
I used to do a lot of like, head and neck surgery for sleep. And it's a big thing. I mean, the snoring, the CPAP machines and all that. So I think I've heard about from that perspective. And I mean, it makes sense. Like if you don't sleep, it's like a form of torture, and those machines are like,
That's Jen, this, use the word scheduled. So people schedule sex? That's like a thing?
Absolutely.
Do you recommend that? Do you recommend?
It can have a negative connotation, but hear me out for a second. If you have busy schedules and maybe your lives don't align sometimes, maybe your careers really, you're two ships passing in the night, or maybe because of children, if you have those, and you're challenged on being able to have time for sex, would you rather be able to say, honey, on Saturday, the kids are all got something to go do. Let's spend a few hours in bed together and have an amazing afternoon while we can, and let's plan for it. So please don't make another plan to do something, because I mean, let's take that time. And that's hot, and you're excited, and you're flirting and texting and talking about it, and Saturday is going to be amazing. Or do you not schedule it, you don't have time, and it just doesn't happen? So I think that scheduled sex can be amazing if you're living a life where you need that. Now, if you're not, and you can organically have sex regularly, well, sure, that's wonderful. I don't think there's a negative to it. I think it's a problem a solution to a problem.
Got it. Ben, are you scheduling this? What's happening over there?
Oh yeah, I got it. It's a repeated calendar twice a day. So with an alarm. Yeah. I've thought about building like a buzzer on for her, but so it like shocked her and she knew. But, yeah.
I'm sure she'll come running when she gets that shock.
Yeah, I'm sure that's super hot.
That'll be the response.
Jen, I don't even know where to go with that, Ben. I don't even know where to go with you.
Maybe we can invent something, Jen.
Yeah,
like sex buzzer or something where you just like. It go both ways, and then the woman could buzz the guy to off or on or something. I mean, it could be something. You never know.
Jen, are men more hardwired to initiate sex?
Well, it's interesting. Men have what is called spontaneous desire, and women have what is called responsive desire. And it is a true neurobiological thing, meaning that let's look at how men can wake up with morning erections, and women don't necessarily do that. It's different in the way our neurobiology is and the way our physical bodies are made. And so you have to think about that. You're always going to have a more of a spontaneous desire with men. And women, being responsive, are going to need more nuance, meaning foreplay that looks like true physical foreplay, or foreplay that looks like, have you been texting me and telling me that I'm hot and how exciting tonight's going to be and we're excited about our date. A buildup of an idea that allows that responsiveness to happen prior to getting together for sex. So that is just a fundamental fact, and there will always be a difference there. I think that there's some women also, depending on timing in life, about how interested you are in sex. Women who are premenopausal or menopausal may not be interested in sex, but maybe women who suddenly get on hormone therapy and are taking testosterone and they're on now having all of those neurochemicals and in their body and bioidentical hormones in their body, suddenly now they want to have sex like they did when they were 25. So there's a lot of other things that can play into that. You know, our age and our hormones play so much in that for women, and for men, they do as well. I mean, men, if they're lacking that testosterone, it'll truly change their sex drive as they get older. Always, it's going to be the difference between spontaneous desire and responsive, and needing to understand those gears of touch, needing to understand how do we gear up for that. What does touch look like before we have sex? You know, is it playful? Is it sensual? Do we have that? Most women don't want the guy that comes in the kitchen and plays grab boob or grab ass to have sex that night. You know, most women would like to have more nuance of a text or a conversation or something that feels a little more as a buildup, because that's how women perceive that foreplay. Whereas most men would be completely fine with a little bit of grab ass right before. And so it's just a different way that different people are wired. But that's a very big generalization I'm giving you for the sake of time and brevity. But I do think that there's always going to be that fundamental difference.
The More You podcast is sponsored by
Voss Collection, which is a curated network of leading physicians and providers in medical aesthetics. The Voss Collection is the Michelin star of medical aesthetics.
Across every clinic that's part of the Voss Collection, the one thing that's the same is that it combines medical expertise, incredible experience, with the absolute perfect touch of artistry that makes this truly personalized for every single patient that walks into the clinic.
And the key is there's so many specialists from different perspectives that learn from one another, hold each other accountable to those levels of expertise. That's what makes us better. That's what makes us the best.
all focused on one goal and one goal only, achieving you a remarkable result.
This is the Boss Collection.
That's interesting. I want to ask you this question. First, I want to give you a stat. So basically with the near universal access of porn, so they show 91.5% of men and 60.2% of women consume porn in the past month. That was a study. That was a study in 2018. I would imagine that might even be higher now. How is this incredible everywhere access to porn affecting relationships and affecting people's sex lives?
There's pros and cons. First of all, if you have never watched porn with your partner and you have the ability for you guys to watch something and be turned on by it and say, you know what, we never tried that. That would be really fun. And it opens the door to curiosity and novelty, then I'm here for it. But if somebody is watching porn as a replacement to be able to connect with their partner, or because it's easier than putting forth the effort, I'm not really going to be here for that. You know, it depends on what you're using it for. It can be highly erotic and highly amazing, but it can also be very detrimental if it's used in a form that is addictive or in a form that's a full replacement for actually showing up to your partner. So I think that it really depends on how that is. But the access of it, OnlyFans, other things that have happened in our society today we didn't have, 10 years ago, to make a really big difference. You have a lot of demonstrated ability to see, whether it's spicy books, book talk is such a thing, whether it's audiobooks, whether it's watching pornography. There's so much more exposure to sex now than we ever had before. But I'm not certain that exposure actually helps people have better sex, because it still comes down to, do we feel safe enough to tell somebody what we really want? And that's why every couple I work with, I want to work with a Yuck and Yum list with them, which is a list that clinically we use that shows a variety of a lot of its different sexual acts. And there's a yes, no, and maybe column. And you're sitting down with your partner and you're both deciding, hiding your work for a minute like you're in school, and choosing your yeses, and you're comparing. And once you've established what you both would be like to do, what sounds sexy to you, which is arousing to you, now you have a date night prescription of some things you can do to create novelty and adventure and a sense of aliveness in your relationship. And then what's also interesting that happens is once you've done all these yeses, then sometimes the maybes become yeses because you're in this sexually charged atmosphere you didn't have before. And then no's are no's, and you respect boundaries of that. But you have an ability to widen your sexual focus and your exposure to different things you can be doing together. And pornography, to go back to your original statement, can do that if it's done in the right way.
I think the greater concern on this, and you tell me if I'm onto something here, is porn in most cases by its nature is not sensitive.
No.
It's not sensual. It's not those things. So it's teaching these younger guys the wrong behavior. And maybe that's then their expectation going into sex, which is definitely probably not lining up with most women. And that is a mass disconnect. And so I'm concerned about that. And then the other part of that is guys that are masturbating twice a day on a Saturday and going out on a Saturday night, like, you're just not going to have the same drive to go find a partner.
For sure. And it does affect relationships and the way you look at sex. I mean, it does. And if that's what sex is modeled for you, that's what sex is going to look like, you're going to be disappointed. And then what are your sexual expectations now? Because people are human. You're going to have human connection. It's not the same as watching someone on a screen. And people, you have to decide, is this somebody I want to build a great sex life with? Because statistics also show the first time you have sex with somebody is never your best time. But when you get to know somebody and you can have an idea, what do you like? And let me tell you what I like. And can we explore or play with this together? Your sex life can change so significantly. And then it can be absolutely amazing. But how many people are going to wait or go through that process to have that if what's been modeled for you is a one-time transactional sexual experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big ask to be at your best your first time out, right, Ben? Need the do-over.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable.
You got to have a little bit of time there, right, to understand. I think it's interesting what you're saying, though, in the sense of people getting comfortable and trying to get comfortable and trying to do that in light speed because you've met someone that wants to hook up on an app and you're not at your best. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe this is TMI, for everyone, but like, I don't think it's good sex unless the other person is having a great time. I think that's the definition of great sex is that the other person was really, really, really having a great time. Is that like a fair statement, or am I off on that?
Well, sure. If the two of you are both enjoying yourselves, then you're having actual true connection. If only one of you is enjoying it, you're going to be called a selfish lover at the least. But how much more willing is that other partner going to be like, well, I really can't wait to do that again, you know? But I also fundamentally believe that everybody's responsible for their own orgasm, meaning, are you using your voice? Are you saying, I don't like that, or this is what I prefer, or this is what I want? And if you're not speaking up, what does that mean? What's going to happen from that? You know, we have to have a voice to be able to share with someone. Nobody's a mind reader. And to be able to express, and this is what gets me off. This is what I find attractive. This is what turns me on. And so that conversation is imperative. And back again, you're not probably going to have a full conversation the first time.
That's a BYO, like bring your own orgasm. I think that's probably critical that you're responsible for that. That's actually, by the way, that's good advice for the show. Like what you just said, let's make sure everyone really understands that. Like what Jenn's saying is that if you're not having a good time and you're not saying anything about it, like that's on you. You got to speak your mind.
For sure. And hopefully you've chosen a partner that is curious enough to want to have that interest to say, great, I'm so glad you told me, let's try this. And to have that connection, back to what we were saying earlier, that bridge is connection and vulnerability and desire to have great intimacy. We can't have great intimacy without the ability to tell someone, hey, I'm going to be vulnerable to let you know I hate what you just did. Instead, I want you to do this. You know, that's what I like. And if you can't say that, you're probably going to feel very unfulfilled.
Jenn, I was hoping that people were going to walk away from this episode with like a few tips and tricks. Is that fair? That's probably the first one. Is that probably the first one like that they should be thinking of?
Yes, for sure. Everybody is responsible for their own orgasm. You have to use your voice, say what you mean what you say, and be willing to be vulnerable enough, exposed enough to tell someone, this is what I like. And I often say to people, if you can't talk about sex, then you shouldn't be having it.
That's a fair point.
I like that. I think that's really good. Jenn, is there another like tip or something like what you just said, which I think is obviously so helpful that people can take away from that?
Sure. If I'm thinking of things, messaging that I often give to people, the next one would be, you know, how embodied are you? How much are you in the moment? How about in the rest of your life, not just in sex? How much can you be present and intentional and in the moment? Being fully embodied means that we can feel into our body, we can drop down into our body, we're out of our head, we can truly be present and intentional. Because if you can't do that in all the other aspects of your life, you're not going to do it sexually. And to do it sexually is what's going to give you these profound sexual experiences, to be very embodied and to be very present and intentional. And a lot of people that say they have sex and they don't really feel anything, well, I would challenge you, don't feel anything for that very reason. Now, there are limitations to that. If someone has trauma or other things they haven't worked through, other issues that are barriers to intimacy, then they need to work through that. But beyond those things, there has to be this sense of interest to say, wow, I really want to be fully in the moment and fully invested in this. And I want to be present and intentional and curious. And those are all the traits that make for a great sexual experience.
That's really cool. So, sorry, but you said like is there like a tip or a trigger that can help people to understand like how to do that?
Well, how do I feel? How do I feel when I'm having sex? Am I so in the moment? Can I literally stop and recognize, well, I am in the moment and this feels good and I'm very aware of how everything feels in my body and I'm here for it? Or are you distracted? Or are you just really trying to just chase your orgasm? Or are you in a hurry? Are you not interested in slowing down and really relishing the sensuality and the sensual aspects that sex has to offer? So I think that it's a check-in that you're doing with yourself, you know, whether it's before or during or even after sex. What was that experience like? How did I experience it?
And Jenn, are you concerned about kind of AI starting to come into the picture and sex robots and like all these things? Like, isn't that like us taking a massive step away from our own like kind of humanization? Like are we now creating that as an act that as nothing that has emotion?
Well, sure. It's the exact opposite of what I'm an expert in, which is connection. It's exactly of that. We're not going to have that if you're having sex in that capacity. And even when people just try to have a relationship with some sort of AI mechanism, it's never going to replace the human component. And I would challenge, if you really want it to, why do you? I would challenge, what is that about? If you really would like to say, wow, I think having sex with a robot would be everything I've ever wanted, well, why is that? What is it that makes you so afraid to show up for a sexual experience truly as you are? Why do you need someone that cannot respond or interact or reply to you that's just going to follow everything you're saying? If you want someone to do everything you want to do, well, go have an amazing BDSM healthy relationship and you can have a lot of dominance and submissiveness. Great. But if you're wanting with an AI, you're wanting with a robot, well, there's something different going on here, because that means you don't want to have any conversation. That means you don't want to have any talk. That means you don't want to connect on any level, and there's a reason for that. So what is it?
But I will say, I imagine they're going to get pretty good at these dang things. You know what I mean? That you can, it can respond to you. It can be mean. It can be nice. It can be rough. It can be soft. I mean, I think it's going to become probably sooner than we think. It'll be a problem, particularly if you put it all together. You got these young guys, they're not going out, they're not going to the bar, they're not meeting people. You know, it's just like, yeah, I could see it's going to be very much a money-making machine, literally, for somebody, and they're going to be motivated. I think we're going to see a big problem with that.
But what happens with that is now we're back to isolation. If we're not connecting with other people, and we don't have the human component of what we even call co-regulation, how our nervous systems interact with another nervous system. If we don't have the ability to do that, and we're relying on isolation with a robot, what does the rest of our life look like? Because if we're isolating ourselves to that degree sexually, I challenge you're probably also isolating yourself in every other way. You're creating a life devoid of human connection. And the thing is, we are fundamentally biologically wired for connection. Think about that's why solitary confinement is a punishment. We're not made to exist completely on our own. We need to connect with other humans. We need to have that. It's how our nervous systems are wired. And so we're talking about changing the entire neurobiology of what humans are. And so it's a very interesting construct to think about. It's going to be very interesting to see where life takes us with all this technology in a very short time.
It's happening quick.
Jen, you got to see all kinds of things coming to you. Like, you got to see all kinds of stuff. I don't want to hear something crazy. I want to hear something funny. Like, is there anything that's come in front of you, that's happened in front of you?
Sex can be pretty funny. You know, I never talk about my clients and their experiences, of course. But I will tell you that when you can laugh about sex and you can find humor in it and you can enjoy that, I can be so connected with my body that I don't have any shame about it. I don't have anything that's affecting my ability to be naked and exposed and vulnerable and raw with somebody. Yeah, there's going to be some humor there for sure. But you have to, again, be willing to face that part of yourself. And some people aren't. Some people never laugh during sex. Some people never talk during sex. And again, back to that original statement, if you're not talking about it, you shouldn't be having it.
I like that. Is there like a number one thing that guys are looking for and a number one thing that women are looking for? Like, I know it's hard to generalize and be universal, but I'm just wondering if we can give the audience something like that.
I don't think it's as much about what men or women are looking for, but I will say that relationally, overall, men and women are looking to have a great sex life. And it's interesting because sometimes couples will come and one partner is saying, yeah, I just want to have more sex. And she doesn't want it, or vice versa. And the other partner is usually like, well, of course I want it, but you're not doing ABC. And it's very hard for people to think, well, wait a minute, what? We immediately internalize somebody doesn't want me. But I would challenge if your partner who loves you, if they do in fact love you, if they've made a decision to not want you, it rarely happens like that. There's something much deeper. Is there repair that didn't happen? Is there resentment that's going undressed, not addressed? Is there problems with safety and feeling as though this is your person? Do you feel like you can't talk about sex? You can't talk about what you want? And so I think that the biggest thing that people come is this idea that my partner is the identified problem. But in fact, it's very rarely that. It's usually a problem relational between the two of you. And we have to break down those things and deal with those barriers to intimacy that are showing up in your relationship. And usually it's quite simple. It really is. Once people start talking and have a psychoeducation of understanding what is really going on.
There's a lot there. I really like that. I want to ask you at some of our rapid fire here, and just want to get it. So we'd like to start out just like first, what's the biggest myth about desire or sex that we can tell people? Like, do we call this our bullshit category? Like, what is being told out there or saying out there that you, in your experiences, that's bullshit?
Well, sometimes I think a lot of women believe that men don't want to have these sensual, great sexual experiences. And there's a lot of feedback on that. And I find that completely to be the opposite. I find that men absolutely want that, but maybe don't know how to get it. Maybe don't know how to be able to share that, or don't feel like that's masculine to share it, or don't know how to approach that. I think there's a huge myth in that. And I see that with women often. They're looking for this emotional connection, and they think that men don't want it. I think, in fact, men do want it. But there's this barrier with both people being able to talk about it and to be able to express what they want. People will say what they want in their job, what they want in every other way. But when it comes to sex, people don't say this is what I want. I mean, think about how many dates do you think ever happen where on, maybe the fourth or fifth date, you're saying, so tell me what you like in bed. People don't say that, but why not? Why isn't that just as important as how many kids do you want to have? What are your life dreams? Where do you want to live? What makes you happy? What are your hobbies? Because sex is a huge part of a relationship, or most relationships, but we don't talk about it.
So the biggest myth is women thinking that men don't want emotional connection through sex, or just in general?
In general. And I find that that's so completely wrong.
What do you find is like really, what advice can you give someone that's just gold? Like what's fantastic that people should hear?
Well, this one would be a little bit on the painful side, but I think it's so important, is that most relationships, and I mean most in a big way, most relationships can heal from infidelity. And a lot of people feel like that is your deal breaker. If that happens, our sex life is over, our relationship's over, you've gone out and had sex with someone else, we are done. But most relationships can heal from infidelity. If you do the work, you can heal from that. And I think that that's one of my specializations. And a lot of couples feel like that is their deal breaker and don't understand that you can get past that. So I think that's a huge, huge thing. Not as exciting of a topic, but I think it's very factual.
No, first of all, that's fascinating.
I'll make sure I tell my wife. It's just we're promoting infidelity on here now. Yeah.
No. Hold on.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I think she's going to be okay with that. I'm just telling you. I just think she's not going to be okay with that. Anyway, is there something like is there an overrated relationship advice that you hear all the time?
Overrated relationship advice. I don't know about that. I get pretty happy when people are giving relationship advice, period, because at least they're thinking about how to improve their relationship. So for me, there's curiosity there, which thrills me. I find if more people had curiosity, we would have more people willing to do the work to learn and grow. So I would love anybody to say that. No, I think from a relationship standpoint, though, people have this idea that they're going to immediately know if this is their person. They go on a one date, nope, that's not it. And I think that's lacking because so many people do not know how to connect on a first date. And so you might miss an opportunity with somebody that could really blossom into something amazing and grow into something fabulous, but you don't give it a chance. And I don't mean ignoring red flags. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm saying that you have in your head this idea of this is what I want in a person. And I have decided and this is it. And if they don't have that, I'm done. But I would challenge, well, what if they're doing the same to you? Are you perfect? Are you going to check every box? Nobody checks every box. So I think that there's an overall, and this is an app related concept, like what we were talking about. That did not exist before. People were much more willing to get to know somebody when dating was more organic. But since it is done a lot on apps or in services and that sort of thing, you're shortcutting so much of that nuance. And so then you meet someone, you're like, nope, that's it. I'm done. Not interested. So I think the advice of, you better know right away, I think that's really misleading.
Really interesting. Hey, you seem like a really positive person, which is wonderful. But I want you to just park that for a second and just give me a neutral answer in there. Where do you see sex and or relationships and all this over the next 5 years going?
I fear that people will become more disconnected and sex will become more lacking in that way. Because sex in its very small bubble by itself, not relationally, just sex by itself, has become so normalized in the way of OnlyFans, pornography, all these other things. And I'm not putting anything down in that. I'm just saying that it becomes so easy and so accessible that there's no interest maybe to develop a relationship in addition to sex. And so I would say from that, if I'm not being positive, that would be something that I fear. I fear that disconnection is still that we're on the path to more disconnection, more isolation, more independence. And when we are thinking in an individual way, it's just about what we want, etc., then there's no usness. There's no usness.
If you were not doing this, like, what would you be doing?
Oh, wow. I don't know. This is my life's work. I love relational work and I love connection. And I think that I can't look at people without imagining, wow, that you could actually choose, instead of just surviving, you could be thriving. And I'm not sure that I could do anything else without looking through that lens. I think that we all have this amazing opportunity to create a relational and sexual life where we thrive, and it's a choice. So if I wasn't doing this, I don't know. That would be pretty hard for me. I might just travel the world.
You could do that. I mean, the scenario is, you don't.
I probably would just do that. I would probably just experience everything life has to offer with an amazing zest for life, to see it all and do it all.
And I hate to use this because it's a negative connotation of what's on your tombstone, but like, what do you want to be known for?
What do I want to be known for? Oh, is this my ominous music here ready to get me
No,
out?
that was Ben's church that he lives next door to. That was just dead on.
I mean, it did really align with where you were going. I would probably say she lived a life full of passion and joy.
Okay, well, that's fair. I just want to thank Jenn Pinkerton for joining us. Hey, listen, all of you out there, it sounds like after this conversation that everyone needs help. So you might want to go to jennpinkerton.com. She is also the host of Redhead Reveal, which is her podcast that she hosts. So make sure you check that out as well. We will have all kinds of clips out there connected to Jenn's social, so you can go ahead and follow her as well once we get all this out. But Jenn, this was a great episode for us. I think we all learned a lot, and I think it was really helpful for everybody, and that's what More You is all about. So thank you so much.
I loved it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Jenn.
See you soon.
Take care.